Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the publisher of Forbes magazine, Rich Karlgaard.
I want to say a few words about the economy. What happened? Where are we going from here? You have to realize that 2.5 years ago, just 30 months ago, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson described the U.S. economy and the global economy as being in the best shape that he'd seen in his career. The best shape that he'd seen in his career. With hindsight, it kind of looks like a ridiculous statement, right? But in fact, it was the truth. The global economy had had 5 years of 5% growth. The U.S. economy had had 5 years of 3% growth. All of you in the room 30 months ago were enjoying pretty good order books. We now know the recession started in December 2007, but it was kind of a rolling start, and the evidence is very ambiguous. Throughout the first half of 2008, it was not all that clear. A lot of it depended on where you lived. A lot depended on what industry you were in. A lot of you had still pretty good forecasts in the first half of 2008. We were supposedly in recession. We never met the technical definition of recession, one of them anyway, which is 2 quarters of contraction. We never met another one, which is sort of declining prices due to falling demand. Then in September, to be specific, September 15th, 2008, the economy went off a cliff. What happened? Well, the financial markets locked up. They went into cardiac arrest. They went into what I call a blackout. Now, you all know what an electricity blackout is, or a bandwidth blackout. It means that a few bad nodes on the network can bring down the whole system. And what was confusing about September 15th was when the Treasury Department let Lehman Brothers fail after having saved AIG, and all of a sudden nobody knew what the rules were anymore. Nobody had any kind of sense of what was going to get saved, what was not going to get saved. This was exacerbated by the fact that the Bush administration was outgoing. It was a lame duck administration. There were some incredibly bad pieces of legislation and regulatory change that had happened in 2006 and 2007 that nobody knew at the time would cause so much damage. So what happened was that we were going into probably an ordinary recession in 2008. All of a sudden we had this financial lockup of 6 months, and the damage was pretty terrific. The damages caused by that probably makes this recession comparable to 73 and 74. The amount that stocks dropped is about the same. The unemployment is the same. The ill mood in the country is the same. Really, it was the recession, it was the bad recession that didn't need to happen, but it happened through a series of policy errors. Now we have to live through this.
Cirrus Design's Vision SJ50 single-engine personal jet offers exceptional fuel efficiency, flexible seating for up to 7, advanced avionics, and all the Cirrus safety features you expect, including the Cirrus airframe parachute system. With its V-tail design, the Cirrus Vision is technologically advanced, yet engineered to be simple to fly, to allow owner pilots more lifestyle pursuits than any other personal aircraft. Learn more about the Vision SJ50 at cirrusdesign.com.
Reason I bring up the 70s, you could make other comparable recessions. I mean, the 70s weren't so bad for aviation. The 80 to 82 recession was another nasty one with 10% unemployment. But the reason I picked 73 and 74 is that the recovery from that recession was kind of interesting. And I think we're going to have a similar kind of a recovery. It's going to be a recovery that once it gets going, I think inflation is going to kick up. I think the headlines are going to be we're going to be reintroduced to the word stagflation. When you read the papers, you're going to see endless stories about a jobless recovery. And so on the whole, it's not going to look that great. So why did Ed bring me up here to talk about all of this bad news? I want to give you 2 pieces of good news. One is sort of the historical comparison of the 1970s, which I think will apply today. I've given you the bad comparison. And then to talk a little bit about global growth. The upside of the 1970s, and there was, even the worst economic decades have upsides. Even the 1930s, not everything was all dire. Some industries did pretty good. Aviation did not have a bad 1930s. Hollywood had a great 1930s. If you look at a movie made in 1930 versus one made in 1939, you see tremendous progress. You're talking about a movie like The Thin Man in 1930. You're talking about The Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind in 1939. Tremendous progress in an awful economic decade. Well, the 70s might have been the second worst economic decade of the 20th century. And yet, think of the companies that were started in the 1970s. It's incredible. It might have been the best decade ever for entrepreneurial startups. 1970, Little Rock, Arkansas. Fred Smith starts Federal Express. He moved it to Memphis in 1973. May 1971, Southwest Airlines makes its maiden voyage out of Love Field in Dallas, Texas. 1975, Bill Gates leaves Harvard after his junior year, moves to Albuquerque, New Mexico, starts a company called MICRO-SOFT, to write a programming language for a kit computer. 1976, Apple Computer was started in a garage in Los Altos, California. 1976, the whole biotechnology revolution was started with a company named Genentech. 1977, Larry Ellison, who's a big fan of big jets, started Oracle in 1977. Charles Schwab started discount brokerage in the 1970s. Intel invented the microprocessor, the most important single invention of the last 50 years in the 1970s. So the upside of all of this is that these kinds of recessions act as they clear out things that don't work. As Warren Buffett says, when you have these recessions and markets drop and the tide goes out, then we find out who's been swimming without clothes. And we find out which business models don't work. We're going to make way for new business models. So we're not going to be in this forever.
The beauty of the Release 9 system architecture is that you have two fully redundant integrated flight displays. Each has access to all the systems and data. Providing full redundancy and eliminating traditional reversionary modes, Release 9 allows either display to be configured as the PFD. Now your failure modes are much more manageable because you can continue to fly with the same familiar display symbology without the need to relearn composite modes you don't typically fly with. Avidyne's Integra Release 9 is truly the next generation in fully integrated flight deck technology.
And the second thing is global growth. Even in a crappy year like this, China's going to grow 8%, India 6%, Brazil 5%, Australia 5%. I mean, there is growth around the world. If you track global growth, you know, from the birth of Christ to about the beginning of the 1800s, the globe grew at less than 0.5% per year. Then came the Industrial Revolution, steam engines applied to milling, steam engines applied to the locomotive, and all of a sudden it starts ticking up to about 1% a year. And then you get into the second half of the 19th century and steamships are crossing the oceans and global trade starts picking up, and now it starts ticking up to about 1.5%. And that actually was the 50 years of the U.S.-China experience, where the U.S. was growing at 6, 7, 8% per year from the end of the Civil War up through World War I. And then you get all of these technologies, the airplane, the television, the microprocessor, the internet, and you see that all of these add to global productivity, and the curve of global growth on an annual basis is a hockey stick. And we're living in this hockey stick period, and I don't think that's going away. So I think there's plenty of reason to be hopeful. Short term, maybe not so much. But you look at the history of the 1970s and the innovation that occurred in a lousy economic decade that happened here, and you look at what's happening around the planet. And I don't know if a year from now or 2 years from now we're going to come back as happy as we were 2 years ago, but I guarantee you in 3 or 4 years we will. Thank you very much.